And our fighters are ready to step onto the scale at this time. Middleweights, 10 rounds of boxing scheduled. His record is 13-0 with 11 knockouts. The 19-year-old undefeated southpaw making his Showtime debut, Elijah Garcia. 158 and 1/2 pounds. We're calling that 158 and a half pounds. And his opponent, 16-0 with 12 knockouts. He is the undefeated WBC number 9 ranked, world ranked middleweight contender, Amilcar Petit Vidal. 159 pounds even, 159 for Amilcar Vidal. And don't miss this one. It's our opening attraction on Showtime Championship Boxing. Undefeated middleweights in action. Amilcar Vidal versus Elijah Garcia. Bring our fighters to the scale at this time. 10 rounds of boxing, middleweights in the ring. Making his Showtime debut at 13-1 with 9 knockouts. Here is Armando Toro Resendiz. 161 pounds. 161 for Armando Resendiz. And his opponent.
Happiness in his face when the scores were announced by Miguel Flores. Unanimous decision. And look, he built off the success of round 1 where he scored the flash knockdown. And outside of maybe a 6th round comeback effort from Gogokia, that was fairly, you don't want to say one-sided, but you didn't get enough from Gogokia to really make an argument in too many of these rounds.
Boxing skill was the big difference there. Gogokia was active. He was trying, but he just didn't have enough tricks or tools to be able to meaningfully close distance and to put Taya on his heels, which is what I think he wanted in the end. But Taya too good with the ring craft, too good with his own pairing of the jab we talked about, the lead right hands, the right hands to the body, all of those things, the splitting of Gogokia's timing. And if you're fighting a guy and they're consistently getting in between your punches, in between your steps, it's going to be a long night. And I think, unfortunately, Gogokia found that out today.
To reset with you, Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, we're the co-hosts of Morning Combat here in Jersey City, New Jersey, on the call for the Showtime Boxing Countdown. And as we continue to build closer to that 9 p.m. Eastern start, you see the two faces on the marquee behind us when Showtime Championship Boxing presents this triple header and an interim WBC featherweight title at stake as Brandon Figueroa, former 122-pound champion, the Heartbreaker, takes on former featherweight title holder Mark Magsayo. Luke, this should be a fun triple header. It's, by the way, just another on a crowded, busy, loaded Showtime Sports boxing calendar to come up. What is it? 9 cards in 10 weeks as we continue on the road to so many big dates, including Tank versus Garcia, which we can't wait for, April 22nd. But Luke, as we continue to set the stage for tonight.
Can I just say, by the way, just looking at this looks like a before and then after, and then before and then after.
Eat healthy, gentlemen, because this is your future, is really what Luke's trying to say. We're going to throw it back to the ring shortly for our second of 3 fights on this preliminary card. But Luke Thomas, Figueroa versus Magsayo, we set it off the top. It promises action. We know the temperaments. We know the history of the two fighters. I know that Brandon Figueroa moving up in weight, talking to him ahead of this fight, his last bout, his featherweight debut, he knocked out Carlos Castro in 6 rounds. He feels like a puncher for the first time. It's not that he wasn't a puncher at junior featherweight, had a beautiful knockout to the body of Luis Neri, but he was known for more for the volume, to get inside and attack you. He feels not having to cut to 122. Not only does he feel more like a puncher if he wants to be, but he's just as willing, he says, to fight from distance, which is something we haven't seen consistently in his career up to this point.
Yeah, the the Castro fight is interesting because, as we talked about it, the first 2 rounds he's trying to box on the outside. Third round was a little bit of that, and then it just got to what he normally does. There is also a question about the stoppage. It was a little bit on the early side by some people's measurements, but he was the one largely dealing, and it was the combination punching at the end where you just saw Castro shield up and just not throw back enough, not move enough, and ultimately that forced the referee to intervene. BC, I believe I heard our colleague at Showtime Sports, Mauro Ronaldo, say that they've measured Brandon Figueroa as having thrown, at least in one round, up to 176 punches. Right? I mean, it's just a level of volume you cannot deal with, or most guys, I should say, would not be able to deal with. Stephen Fulton Jr., notwithstanding, but nevertheless, that kind of onslaught, that only really happens when he's in that close range, when he's jabbing at distance. BC, here's my thought on that. I don't know how you feel, but when I watched the Castro fight.
As you can see, highlights of it right here.
Yeah, when you watch it, it's like he performed fine at distance, but he wasn't a menacing threat at distance, at least not yet.
Right. Well, look, he showed us he can punch in this weight class.
Yes.
Not taxing his body as hard has made a big difference. But I think it's the willingness to say, look, the Figueroa family, a boxing family, has been criticized through the years. His older brother, Omar Figueroa Jr., of course, trained by their father, Omar Sr., they've always given away the reach and the potential boxing advantage to fight on the inside. But I like that he's assessing his career, Brandon, and saying, I'm going to need that versatility down the line. He had that very close fight with Stephen Fulton Jr. that we'll get into as the evening unfolds, an instant classic where I think he learned potentially some lessons of needing to be a little bit more versatile. So we'll see tonight, is he going to stick to the boxing plan, or will he mix it up with Magsayo on the inside? You are looking inside the ring here in Ontario, California for our second of 3 fights on this Showtime Boxing Countdown card. And this will be in the welterweight division. 8 rounds and a bit of a crossroads battle, Luke, when we talk about 22-year-old unbeaten prospect Trayvon Marshall and 29-year-old veteran Justin DeLoach Doc. You may have known him for years as Justin DeLoach, but has added to the end of his last name. And Luke, after a brief 2022 retirement, Justin DeLoach Doc is back at the urging of his family at age 29 to put the gloves back on and see what he can do in early action.
Yeah, no feeling out whatsoever from these two.
Trayvon Marshall in the black trunks with the silver gloves, just 22 years old. Landover, Maryland, born and raised, now fights out of Capitol Heights. It's Justin DeLoach Doc with the black gloves, the white trunks with gold trim.
Shouts to the PG County faithful watching the stream here.
Trayvon Marshall, for the record, trained by Andrew Council, who is the new trainer of Jarrett Swift Hurd, who will be in tonight's co-feature on the Showtime Championship Boxing telecast.
It seems to me like Marshall is trying to meet DeLoach Doc on his own terms, and that's fine for now, but I don't know if that's the best option for him through the course of the 8 rounds.
Just the 8th pro fight for Trayvon Marshall. And talking about a layoff, how about 2 months? Knocked out Sean West in the first round, January 7th of this year. And he's back in it, stepping up in class against the veteran Justin DeLoach Doc, who you see the 5 losses, but he was a top amateur. He's well known in the PBC ranks as a guy who can challenge you, a guy who can test you.
Yeah, see, Doc is the one trying to get Marshall's back on the ropes. Marshall, you can see posting, framing, pinning, and blinding with the lead hand. That's nice work. But he's got to get him off.
It's almost as if Trayvon Marshall's trying to establish something that I'm not going to back up against you.
Yeah, but the problem is he's landing and then staying where he's at, so those right hands from DeLoach Doc are coming over the top because he's just right there to be hit. He's what they call taking pictures, BC. Landing a nice shot and then not moving.
Taking turns of unloading powerful combinations here. Good action in the opening round. The welterweight division.
I gotta say, I don't mind the strategy against Marshall, right? If you're DeLoach, Again, I apologize because he's been known as Deloach for long stretches of his career, and now the name has changed a little bit, so if I get it wrong, I apologize. But Deloach Stock, hey, you're fighting a younger guy who's less experienced? Absolutely get in his face. Make him fight to the best you can your fight. Pressure him. Force him into early mistakes.
Well, he's had some good counter shots, as you're seeing here late, but the activity has picked up from Trayvon Marshall.
He was bleeding already, Deloach Stock, and that uppercut from Marshall, fantastic to close the round.
Exciting first round here in the welterweight division. 8 rounds scheduled for. And Trayvon Marshall at 22, Luke Thomas, as we look back, came punching right from the opening bell and looked to establish a certain level of a tone that he's willing to take Deloach Stock's power, and he's certainly willing to give it back.
Yeah, I mean, they're trading here a little bit. I do like some of the glove work and the glove control that Marshall is attempting. I would like to see him use the jab a little bit. I would like to see a little bit of the jab. Let's see what we can do with that.
Marshall turned pro in 2021. Just 20 pro rounds of experience up to this point. Deloach Stock is nearly 6 times the equivalent of pro round experience up to this point. A 10-year pro who we mentioned had a very brief retirement. But his girlfriend was pregnant with their 4th child, their first daughter. Justin decided to get back in there with the urging of his family behind him and continue his career. Just 29 years old, despite being a 10-year pro. What a big victory it could be here. Should he be able to hand the first loss to the young prospect Trayvon Marshall? The action right off the start again in round 2, heating up.
Deloach is just brawling. And I guess Marshall might be able to meet him in the middle and win, but I don't know that that's the wisest approach. I got to say, I do like the bicep and glove control from Marshall, especially as he separates. Here, you can see him framing. Just pay attention to the lead hand and lead forearm of Marshall. Look how much he uses it to move, pin, block, and turn.
One thing to consider regarding Deloach Stock's comeback, the layoff in question
There
here,
it is.
2 years and 4 months. That's 28 months out of the ring. Wonder if that's part of the younger fighter Marshall's strategy to get him into some action, try to tire him out as these rounds progress. This is phone booth stuff here in round 2.
Oh, these body shots are wearing on Deloach. That right uppercut, BC. He goes right to the body, right uppercut.
See fans in that first couple rows jumping to their feet there after a couple of those clean body shots landed for Marshall. Deloach taking it well, but these punches are landing hard and heavy. Very clean shots early on from Trayvon Marshall. It never hurt getting that sparring experience against a former unified champion like Jarrett Swift. Heard. Deloach Stock still game, Luke, but the power, you can just read it on his face there as it looks like some blood flowing from his nose.
Oh, hard left, too hard. Oh, that. Sorry, I'm tripping over my own words here. 2 hard left hooks there from Marshall. One much more so than the other one, but a good response.
Intoxicating action, Luke Thomas here in round 2.
Gotta say, puts me on mega tilt when the referees don't wear gloves. Just want to point that out for absolutely no one.
How about the cashiers in the grocery store? You prefer gloves? Optional?
Optional.
Good use of the gloves here from Trayvon Marshall. 2-punch combination, landing flush. First time we've seen Deloach Stock since a 2020 9th-round knockout loss to Imantas Staniosis, who currently holds the secondary world title here at welterweight. It's a big fight coming up himself against unbeaten Virgil Ortiz Jr.
I would like to see Marshall fight from this range a little bit more. Seems to me he can do, maybe not land quite as cleanly, obviously, but stay out of some of the trouble that Deloach was able to put him in. Although Deloach, clearly the worst for the wear here.
That was a big round for 22-year-old Trayvon Marshall. Felt at times as if he wondered if he was 1 or 2 punches away from potentially dropping Deloach Stock as he visibly hurt him with body shots. Big power shots, as you can see. Good handiwork right here on the inside.
That right hand to the body, right uppercut is beautiful. Frames, gets away. Frames again, right to the body, right uppercut. Frames off with the left hand. Love that.
2 rounds in the books. Welterweights, 8-round scheduled bout here. Our second of 3 on the Showtime Boxing Countdown preliminary action. Brian Campbell with you alongside Luke Thomas.
Errol Spence is very good at using his lead hand as for pinning, blocking, all kinds of stuff. I'm not here to say Marshall's on Spence's level. I don't mean that. I just like it when taller fighters, which Spence is not especially tall for his weight class, but I do like it when taller, lankier fighters use frames more nimbly on the inside space.
I think as a DC guy, you just like it whenever a DMV fighter shows up. That's my personal opinion.
When they win.
All right.
When they win. Or when they recognize my tattoos, BC. Either one.
Power shots early on from the veteran Justin DeLoach-Stock on the inside.
Marshall is trying to time that left hand when DeLoach has lowered his level and then returns to his top level, and that's fine. He's landed it a couple of times, but sometimes he hasn't, and then Doc makes him pay for it.
Well, he's standing in DeLoach-Stock's punching range right here, and we're seeing a much more, so let's say, a sense of urgency from DeLoach-Stock. He was hurt multiple times in round 2, but he's come out throwing, and strategy-wise, Trayvon Marshall is giving him every chance to land on the inside by meeting him right there.
And again, I can't get over the lead hand pinning. Look at that. Lead hand pinning and posting helps him get away even if he backs up in a straight line. Helps him keep the distance. It's just good work. But he has to be careful with it, obviously. Left hand to the body. Left uppercut there now from Marshall.
Marshall with victories by KO or TKO in his last 5 bouts. 7-0 overall with 6 knockouts. Just that slight head movement to lessen the blow from the big power shots by DeLoach-Stock. But again, you have to question, does it behoove him to stand at this range for all 3 minutes of each round?
This is a little bit better. DeLoach slowing down a little bit. Good right hand.
Use the jab to set it up. Good power punching from young Trayvon Marshall.
Also, I got to say, if you watch, there's a little bit of elbow blocking. Oh!
Big right hand, and down goes DeLoach-Stock in round 3.
He got cracked with a right hand. That's it.
Referee
That's
Thomas Taylor has seen enough. What a performance. A resounding 3rd round TKO for unbeaten 22-year-old Trayvon Marshall. Hey, DMV, big time win.
BC, they know how to fight in PG County.
Woo.
You better believe that. Let's watch the replay here. Frames off, left hook, right hand. Oh, what a clean shot.
The Capitol Heights, Maryland product improves to 8-0. That's his 7th stoppage win there at welterweight for young rising prospect Trayvon Marshall, in the same gym, of course, as Jarrett Swift-Hurd, the former junior middleweight unified champion, who will be in the second of 3 fights on tonight's main card of Showtime Championship Boxing. But what a performance here in our second of 2 preliminary fights. Justin DeLoach-Stock, Luke, coming after that long layoff of 26, 28 months, and was game. Landed big power shots, came to fight. But as we saw with that finish, I'd love to get another look at it. A big-time 2-punch combination. And when Trayvon Marshall sits down on his power shots at close range, you know, you had me wondering if he was staying a little bit too long in the punching range of his opponent. Look, what do I know here, Luke? The young puncher knew what he was doing.
No, how about the framing he was doing? He frames first, throws a shot, and obviously gets a response from DeLoach, but he doesn't move DeLoach. He stays right where he is, and so the right hand, after the reframing of the distance and where he needed to be, framing off the left hand, it set up the right. Again, boxers, pay attention to the ones who can use the lead hand, whatever side it is, to pin, turn, frame, you name it. It adds a whole lot you can do with all the rest of your punches.
The time is 2 minutes and 7 seconds of round 3. Justin DeLoach-Stock hit the canvas, was able to reach his feet, but referee Thomas Taylor had seen enough as Trayvon Marshall inside the center of the ring gets announced as the winner, gets his hand raised. Hope we can get another shot, a replay, Luke, of that finish there in round 3. But look, Trayvon Marshall came out from the very start, got in the face of Justin DeLoach-Stock, looked to establish himself as the more aggressive, the bigger puncher, the more game fighter. For any thought we had that it could be dangerous, he moved well with the counter shots. And look at this round 3. Justin Deloach came out with his best stuff early going, landed some power shots. But in that close punching range, he was vulnerable, and Trayvon Marshall took care of the action. 8-0 with 7 knockouts. And that's 2 fights complete on our Showtime Boxing Countdown preliminary action. I'm Brian Campbell. Luke Thomas alongside me here, Morning Combat Studios in Jersey City, New Jersey. We're going to throw it back out to the ring in just a few minutes. Ontario, California, and the final of 3 featured prelim bouts. And I'm talking about the return of Terrell Gaucher, former title challenger at 154 pounds, fresh off a close loss to Tim Tszyu. He is going to take on Brandon Lynch, who just so happens to be the nephew of Eddie Murphy.
That's the report.
There is that. We'll get to that fight shortly. But Luke, resetting in the top of our broadcast here, 9 p.m. Eastern is the kickoff start, 6 Pacific for tonight's Showtime Championship boxing card. Figueroa, Magsayo, the interim WBC featherweight title on the line. And reminder, you don't have Showtime, you might as well jump on board right now. How about a free trial? How about 30 days right now, Showtime.com, to get ahead of the action. Luke Thomas, tonight's triple header will kick off with a 10-round middleweight bout as Amilcar Vidal takes on Elijah Garcia. But I want to focus on our co-feature this evening. It is the return of a DMV product himself, Jarrett Swift Hurd. He's going to take on a hungry Armando Resendiz. Did I get that correct? Resendiz. I've been working on it all night. It's a 10-round middleweight bout, but the story here for Jarrett Swift Hurd is an easy one to understand. He was the unified junior middleweight champion of the world. He co-authored 2018's Fight of the Year against Arislan Lara with the late drama to win the title. You see pictures of his earlier knockout win over Tony Harrison, who's got a big fight coming up next weekend against Tim Tszyu. But for Jarrett Swift Hurd, Luke, he loses to Julian Williams by upset to lose his title 3 years ago. Comes back with a victory, long layoff. Then came back with a split decision loss to Luis Cuba Arias. We watched that fight together.
Yes.
It was on the undercard in 2021 of Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul from South Florida. It was raining in that football stadium. Maybe it wasn't the perfect environment, but we saw a flat Jarrett Swift Hurd that night.
I think we saw a flat Jarrett Swift Hurd in the J-Rock fight, too. And a credit to J-Rock for doing it. I don't want to say that it wasn't anything that he did. And, of course, we'll have more time to discuss this. The fighters are now in the ring. But, BC, there's an argument to be made, and we'll see what happens tonight. Like, maybe this is the night that Jarrett Swift Hurd really gets back on the horse. But
Sure.
If not, there's an argument to be made about whether or not the J-Rock fight was a bit of a turning point for him. And that was a big fight for him in his own home market. I don't know if folks remember this. He was allowed to wear the colors of the then called the Washington Redskins. He was allowed to wear the team's colors, the burgundy and gold, into the what's called the Patriot Center, now the Eagle Bank Arena. It was a big to-do, a big homecoming fight after having, as you mentioned, the wins over Trout, the wins over Lara, the wins over Harrison, all these great wins. And then it just kind of fell apart. We saw him in Florida for the Arias fight, and he just got outworked. He wasn't the same kind of guy. He's changed trainers. He's had a lot of time off. I am very curious to see what he looks like tonight.
Also had the loss of his father, who died of COVID and a heart attack at the age of 63 in March of 2021. But let's go to the ring here, Ontario, California. And this should be a good one. Our final preliminary bout on this 3-fight Showtime Boxing Countdown telecast. Well, it looks like potentially a swing bout here. Am I wrong?
Yes, I am not sure who these gentlemen are. Let's just call it.
Some information to you shortly. Still to come, of course, Terrell Gaucher in our featured bout, taking on Brandon Lynch, 154 pounds.
This is Daniel Blancas taking on Kendall Prather. Or Prather. If this
4-round super middleweight bout. Who doesn't love a little bonus boxing from time to time, huh?
Yeah. By the way, Creed 3 is out. We got some Creed.
Creed
Trunks?
3 released nationwide yesterday.
Did you see it?
I've not seen it yet, but as you and I have talked about at length on Morning Combat, I have twin 15-year-old sons, and I took them on the Rocky journey. We're currently through the first 4. We've got Rocky 5, Rocky Balboa.
You could stop here.
And the 2 Creed fights to
also,
come.
this fight could stop here.
This fight, Jack Reese, the referee, going to rule that a knockdown. 4-round super middleweight swing fight. Daniel Blancas, Kindale Prather. And that's Daniel Blancas, the 4-0 unbeaten fighter, goes by the nickname of the Iceman. That's a second knockdown in round 1. The Iceman cometh, Luke Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it really either he's not going to get up. That's it.
Jack Reese says he's seen
Grand opening,
enough.
grand closing, Brian Campbell.
Kindale Prather unable to make it out of round 1 here. Little bonus boxing for you. We got caught off guard there with the swing bout, but
You ever seen the Abe Simpson gif where he walks into the bar and walks right back out?
Right, in and out
like
of Moe's. I think it was Chris Rock who once said,
Grand opening, grand closing.
Grand closing. There it is. Daniel Blancas, first round TKO victory, scoring 2 knockdowns of Kindale Prather in this super middleweight contest. Blancas improves to 5-0. Good body punching.
Yeah, he's just absorbing shots and not firing back at all, and then he eventually falls, and then Jack Reese counts him out. That's not a whole lot more to it than that.
21 years old, Daniel Blancas. Milwaukee, Wisconsin is his home.
Yeah, this is target practice.
And the trunks of Apollo Creed coming up empty around the waist of Kindale Prather. Luke, do you have a favorite Rocky movie in the series, including the Creeds? I mean, it's all the same family.
We've kind of talked about it a little bit. I'm going to go... Okay, so Rocky 1 is the best movie.
It won the Oscar for Best Picture. It's technically the best movie, but my question more is...
Rocky 4.
What's your favorite? What's the most rewatchable?
Rocky 4.
Yeah, it's either 3 or 4. That's the real debate here. But hey, 2006's Rocky Balboa was a nice surprise, and I know you're not willing to...
None of what you're saying is true, but I forgive you for having the palate and movies of a toddler.
Thank you.
Okay.
Still to come, our featured bout, of course, that we promised you. Terrell Gaucher going to take on Brandon. I'm going to get this wrong all night because, to be fair, Luke Thomas, right? We've got a producer on Morning Combat.
So we have a producer who has the exact same name,
Brandon
spelled
Lynch.
differently. Yeah.
Yes, is going to be in this one tonight, and I want to say Brendan Lynch, but not going to do that here. But Luke Thomas, to get back to where we were atop of this card, obviously 9 p.m. Eastern, Figueroa, Magsayo. You can see the information behind you only on Showtime. But for Jarrett Swift-Hurd, in tonight's co-feature, Armando Resendiz. It's going to be a Resendiz. It's going to be a struggle.
I think everyone knows that we're both gringos. You more so than me.
Resendiz. Look, for Jarrett Swift-Hurd, though, the loss of his father, the loss of his world titles. Now a new weight class, though, moving up to middleweight. That was the division that he fought Luis Cuba Arias in 2 years ago. Yep. In his last fight, suffered a split decision loss on the Mayweather-Logan Paul undercard. Long time off, but new trainer this time around in Andrew Council, a former pro fighter himself, local trainer there in the DMV area. We saw him take one fight with Kay Koroma, former U.S. amateur coach. Now he's got a new direction. Luke, do you think we'll see more of a boxing Jarrett Hurd or the same car crash style of take a punishment but get inside and wear you down? I mean,
this is the part, too. Like, here, people forget about this. Don't even look at your notes. Just look at me. Pop quiz. How old is Jarrett Swift-Hurd?
32 years old.
32 years old. That's not that old. That's really not that old, but...
Mileage, baby. Mileage.
But the fights that he had, and we love him for it. And by the way, when he was winning against the Lara, you mentioned 2018 Fight of the World, the Laras of the world. Dude, he was a world champion, and he deserved to be looked at as the guy in that weight class. But those were beatings. Those are very, very difficult fights to win in the way in which he was winning it. And Hurd was that guy at that time. But BC, it's now 8 years. I was going to say 8 years. It's now 5 years on from 2018. And so we're at a point now where it's like, well, what really is there? He's taken the time off, which I like. But again, I go back to like, what's the timeline? He had those 3 great wins. Then he has the fight against J-Rock. It doesn't go his way. He gets... obviously, more time off.
Well, we saw him come back on Showtime.
Right.
You and I were there that night in Brooklyn against, I believe it was Chia Santana was his opponent. And he was looking to alter his style. It was obvious. He just didn't look comfortable at all in doing that.
I mean, it's kind of funny. We have Hurd in the main or co-main, and then we have Figueroa in the main. But 2 guys who are like right on top of you with their style, who both over time are like, maybe I should fight a bit of a different way. But once you go down a certain path at up to a point, certainly where you're winning world titles away, it's very difficult to become much more of a mover boxer as opposed to the inside fighters that both of them naturally seem to be. It's just that when you're a natural inside fighter, you are shaving off years at the end of your career by virtue of the way you're fighting in the middle of it. And I just wonder, has Hurd's time off with the new trainer given us reason to believe, we'll find out tonight, that he can make another run, potentially? But by the way, middleweight, we should also say, kind of wide open.
Kind of wide open is the best way to say it.
Kind of wide open at this whole time. So if he looks good tonight, and 32 years of age, former champion, he's got some name, co-main here on Showtime, like, I'm not saying middleweight is his for the taking, but he could make a little bit of a move here.
Well, his former opponent, Julian J. Rock Williams, has a Showtime main event coming up against Carlos Adames in June, which is similar to this type of comeback journey.
That's a tougher fight for
sure. No question about that, but it's the same journey of taking time off, looking to come back. And let's be honest about this. It's not just Swift Hurd losing his father. Remember, it's a guy who still lived at home when he became a world champion, right? It's that closeness to his parents. That was a big setback. He ballooned up as high as 217 pounds during the pandemic. And now we're talking about layoffs tonight. The longest of his career he'll snap tonight, which is 21 months, but he had a 17-month layoff entering the fight before. So Jarrett Hurd's got a lot of questions to answer about his style, about his hunger, about whether this time off can offset some of that mileage that he's accrued by making one tough fight at the highest level after another, and sort of, unapologetically being that steamrolling style, which is putting himself into damage, into danger, and being willing to do that to wear down his opponent. But when we talk about the new trainer here, he's working at the Triple Threat Boxing Gym in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. The trainer is Andrew Council. The old boxing heads will remember that he twice unsuccessfully fought for a version of the middleweight world title, once on Showtime against Keith Holmes. But the switch from Kay Koroma over to Andrew Council, Trayvon Marshall, the young prospect that we just saw get the big stoppage win in this last fight, trains there. He's gotten good sparring work with Antoine Douglas, Charles Conwell. But until we come out and see him tonight, and the attitude, the demeanor, if he's going to be more of a boxer, does he have the confidence to pull that off? Look, Resendiz is 13-1 with 9 KOs. This should be a challenge. But this should be an opponent that, if Jarrett Swift Hurd is going to do big things at middleweight, that he should come out and handle and get off with his jab and try to establish some level of distance. Because if you're just going to keep running into your opponent's time and again, you're going to have a short career at the top. And these are some of the questions he's got to ask himself about what style he's going to implement moving forward, and will he have the confidence to stick with it? Will he look good in doing so? Will he revert back to where he was beforehand? I think of late, he just sort of looked flat the rare times we saw him. Let's see if all that time off can re-spark something.
And also, just as a reality about where he's at, if this fight was 5 years ago, there wouldn't be a doubt in my mind that Hurd would win, and win rather convincingly inside the first half of the fight. But that's just not where we're at this point. Also, there's a question about whether Resendiz has been a little bit overlooked. But nevertheless, this is, for a lot of folks inside the boxing world, a little bit of like, where is Jarrett Hurd? Is he coming or going? Can he really rebound? Can he get right? Potentially in a new weight class that, as we mentioned, is wide open for the taking. And we just don't know. We really don't know. Massive, massive unanswered questions. And again, we go back to it, BC, that last fight he had against Arias. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did. He didn't have a strong enough push through enough of the fight. He got outworked in that fight.
He got hurt, it seemed, at times,
He got hurt at times. He just seemed like you would, if you didn't know their respective histories, you would have thought that their biographies had been swapped or something. Like the one guy who was the world champion before and had one of these great fights in the aughts in 2017, 2018. He was nowhere to be found.
But to Luis Arias' credit, he's always been an opportunistic fighter, always been a good fighter. He's got a big fight of himself coming up against Erickson Lubin in June. But that was an upset. That was a shocking version of Jarrett Swift that showed up that night. So who's facing him tonight? How about 24-year-old Armando Resendiz? Luke, he's from Mexico. He's got a nickname of El Toro, the Bull, and that's sort of what he's known for. Big punching power, 9 knockouts in 13 pro fights. But he's got a new trainer in Manny Robles. And we've seen Resendiz in the past, short-term with Bob Santos, short-term with Ismael Salas, two world-renowned respected trainers. Let's see the new relationship with Manny Robles can do. He's got some good sparring out there in California with Sebastian Fundora, Virgil Ortiz Jr. So this is a guy who's going to be opportunistic, going to look for his moment here to try to pull the upset. But let me read you this quote from the press conference this week that Jarrett Hurd said. He said, quote, "I almost feel like I'm back to where I was before I was unified world champion. I'm back to the guy that people weren't really believing in. I'm back to being the guy who has to go out there and prove every time why I was where I was." Sounds a little bit like hunger to me, in a good way.
And sounds like he really doesn't care for maybe some of the media or community narratives about him at this point. Oh, he's done. He can't get it going again. Whatever version of it that he hears and it is not responding to, that could be motivation as well. But in the end, fighters can and will say anything up until the fight. Really, that's nice. I hope he's right. I certainly hope. I do think that the time off is probably, in this particular case, not going to be any kind of a disaster for him. I think it's probably going to be on the good side for all the reasons you mentioned, not just what about my style, what about my damage, but also, okay, hold on. We had a fight against a guy that we probably should have beaten, and we didn't, and we kind of got, I don't know, not run over is a strong word, but surprisingly handled. If we're going to make a real push at this, if I'm his team, and of course I'm not, but I'm imagining what those conversations might look like, we're going to start again. We're going to do it the right way. We're going to get your weight where it needs to be. We're going to get the timing where it needs to be. All the stuff outside of the ring with his family that had tragically gone wrong. We got to get to a space where you're in the right place physically and mentally and the right weight class. We shall see. We shall see if these ingredients finally in this timing, because remember, life is all about timing. We shall see what he looks like tonight. Middleweight is there for the taking.
One thing Swift did say was he feels the pure love of the game for the first time in years, and that matters. I mean, we've seen fighters before make some money, get some headlines, get some good highlights out there, and change who they are, change the work ethic, let's say, that got them there. Just, in times it becomes more of a job over time, the media requirements, but you do have to wonder if all this time he's heard the negative things coming out. I mean, boxing's a tough space, Luke. I mean, anywhere where there's social media involved and you're a star and people are firing comments at it can be a tough space. Boxing, you're only as good as your last fight, sadly, right? We overrate at times the value of losses in terms of how it can damage somebody, but big opportunity in a wide open division. Speaking of that wide open division, Luke Thomas, our opening fight on tonight's Showtime Championship boxing card is the 10-round middleweight bout. Talk about this wide open division between unbeaten fighters. Two fighters that have a big opportunity to make their name known on a higher level. When Amilcar Vidal Jr., respect for that, 16-0 with 12 KOs, takes on, get this, 19-year-old Elijah Garcia, 13-0 with 11 KOs. Now for Amilcar Vidal Jr., Amilcar. I got it. I got this. All right.
More like Amir Carr. That's not quite the same thing.
So for Vidal Jr., native of Uruguay, Bob Santos is among the busiest, most decorated trainers in the game. He had an incredible 2022 that let's be fair, if it wasn't for that big victory by Frank Martin, of course, who's trained by Derek James, who trains Spence, who trains Jermell Charlo, it may have been trainer of the year, Bob Santos. Is everybody signing to fight with him right now?
Seems that way. Bob Santos just every weekend we're watching boxing, whether we're on site or not. There's Bob Santos in the corner just getting to work. And again, not all of us guys are coming up with victories. We were there, for example, when Hector Garcia fought Tank Davis. He was a little bit overmatched, obviously, in the end. But Bob Santos is a hell of a trainer. And I love what he does in terms of just believing in everyone's upside. And the guys who he trains, they always talk to you like they fully believe in a mission in a way where
Doesn't he feel like a guru at times, like a Tony Robbins? Does. He feels like he was in the corner of Hector Luis Garcia against Tank Davis in that pay-per-view fight earlier this year, and that was a big challenge, but I thought Hector Garcia showed out well. He helped in the corner of Yordenis Ugas for the Errol Spence Jr. fight. He's the cut man in the corner for David Morrell Jr., although Ronnie Shields is the lead trainer. He's been around boxing forever, but whoever he attaches himself to, Carlos Adames, who's got a world title, Alberto Puello, who's got a world title at 140, they seem to come out of their shells and have the biggest runs of their career. He's the hot trainer of the moment.
I just
He'll be in the corner of Vidal.
Real quickly, but this fight is, this is an amazing fight, right? Elijah Garcia, as you mentioned, 19 years old, correct?
19 years old, but married with 2 kids. His father is an ex-fighter, Jorge Garcia, who's in his corner. His uncle was a pro boxer. This seems like a young gentleman out of Arizona, the Phoenix area, who knew from the very beginning what he'd be doing for a living.
And listen, he looks good on tape, certainly. There's no denying.
This is a step up.
This is a major step up. And he was asked about why he was taking such a major step up, and his answer was, I'm telling you, I'm ready. He thinks, speaking of life being timing, he thinks this is his time. It starts much earlier than a lot of folks either would say is true or even is advisable. But listen, Speaking of all the smoke here on Showtime.
Oh, he wants it.
He wants all the smoke.
So to update, his father, Jorge Garcia, is his trainer, an ex-fighter. His grandfather was an ex-fighter. And his uncle, Jesus Gonzalez, a super middleweight southpaw who once fought Adonis Stevenson and lost, the former light heavyweight unified world champion. So good genes in the family there for one young Elijah Garcia. But we've got one more fight for you back in the ring in Ontario, California, which we'll throw to now. It's our featured presentation on this 3-bout Showtime Boxing Countdown card, and it's the return of Terrell Gausha, the 2012 U.S. Olympian, former world title challenger at 154 pounds, 35 years old. But as we saw from his lone appearance last year, a close decision loss to Tim Tszyu. He knocked Tszyu down in the first round, the young unbeaten fighter who was making his U.S. debut. And Luke, like Terrell Gausha has been anytime he stepped up to the highest level, maybe outside of that title loss to Arislandi Lara in 2017, which was one-sided. He's had some tough, close fights against names that we know very well in this division. Always game, good defensive fighter, good boxing pedigree. He can show you some pop, but can he be consistent enough?
He's got to be motivated. He went from the main event back to the prelims.
Sure.
And, you know, he's a talented, experienced fighter. I bet he is absolutely looking to make sure his next fight is going to be at the top of the card. I certainly, he is capable of that.
Brandon Lynch across from him.
Are you ready?
And here we go, your featured preliminary bout on this Showtime Boxing Countdown show.
You mentioned some of the pop that Gausha has shown. The Jamonte Clark win.
Ooh, that was a
great example of that.
That was a railroading 2-round knockout win.
Now, what's interesting here is Gausha is not heavy on volume.
Let go.
So I'm going to be curious to see exactly what he does as a consistent weapon as this fight progresses.
12-month layoff that Terrell Gausha is snapping for this fight. Going to bounce back from that close loss to Tim Tszyu, as we mentioned. Oof. He's lost in the past against the likes of Erickson Lubin by close decision, a split draw opposite Austin Trout, and then that one-sided title opportunity in 2017 against Lara. But see what the 35-year-old has here.
By the way, he dropped Tszyu in the first round.
No question about it.
He's got a little bit of pop.
And his opponent, Brandon Lynch, 31 years old, fighting out of Los Angeles, but a native of Inglewood, New Jersey. Bad news, Brandon Lynch, Luke, got some, let's say, a few headlines back when he originally turned pro and made some noise early on because he's the nephew of Eddie Murphy, of his late brother, Charlie Murphy, the comedian, the actor.
What's the best Eddie Murphy movie?
I mean, you can go with The First 48 Hours. You can go with Trading Places, although the humor there might not work so well in 2023.
Eddie makes it work.
You know, I'll just put on Eddie Murphy Raw. All right, that's enough for me, okay? I thought you were going to say The Nutty Professor. I really thought you were going to.
I'm not. I've not been hit in the head with a tire iron.
12-1-1, the record for Brandon Lynch. 9 KOs in 12 pro fights. Turned pro in 2017. Slow start here compared to the action that we saw between welterweights in our last fight. Trayvon Marshall getting a stoppage win over Justin DeLoach. Doc. But this is 10 rounds in the 154-pound division. Just to touch them, feel them, type of figure out the distance, download the data.
Couple of right hands have gotten through for Gausha. Both of them have jabbed to a degree, but neither has really been able to put their stamp on the round in any kind of significant way.
10 seconds. Top of the round. 10 seconds.
Round one behind us in this 10-round preliminary feature bout. It's Terrell Gausha, the 2012 U.S. Olympian, born in Cleveland, fights these days out of Encino, California. Encino Man, good 90s movie.
I wouldn't say good. I'd say more terrible.
I mean, it's not Biodome. That's a train wreck.
Okay, fair enough.
All
That's
right,
also.
there you go.
Never speak of that again.
There it is right there. What do you like so far to Brandon Lynch?
He's moving well, I think. He's not overcommitting. He's making reads early. Again, we haven't seen exactly the extent of their weaponry or the full game plan. This is still too early, to your point, that they're not just brawling. So steady as she goes. Here's a little bit of a replay. Good 1-2 there as he moved across to his own right from Gaucher. And then a little stabbing jab to the body. He does have a good stabbing jab to the body, Gaucher does.
Gaucher certainly has the advantages on paper from the standpoint of experience, technique. But Brandon Lynch has been known as a little bit of an action fighter throughout his young career. 2-fight series he had with Marcos Hernandez in 2021 and 2022 is the one to point to. They fought to an all-action split draw the first time, but in that rematch, bad news. Lynch got up off the canvas after being knocked down in round 2 and then fought through a nasty gash above his right eye and went on to take a unanimous decision over 8 action-packed rounds. Returned to the ring one more time to close 2022 in October, scoring a 3rd-round stoppage. But this is an extreme step up in competition for Brandon Lynch.
Gaucher getting the better of the jabbing contest thus far. It's not a runaway, but you can see right there. He's able to double it and move at the same time. He's just finding his way through the gloves a little bit better so far than Lynch.
If there's ever been a criticism of Terrell Gaucher at the highest level, sometimes a little bit too patient, a little bit too playing chess when activity may be the thing to get the nod in a close round. But technique is always there, good hard counterpuncher. And when he's able to build behind that jab, he can do it all night long. As you mentioned earlier, 2 fights ago when he went in there against Jamonte Clark.
You see that? He punched with him and landed the right hand. Good work from Gaucher. That's the best punch he's landed probably the entire fight.
The key about that Jamonte Clark win, Luke, is he showed intention. He showed a purpose. Coming off the loss to Erickson Lubin and really tried to show that there's more in there under the hood.
He also showed a good alley cross. He was able to step off at an angle and to get his head off the center line while his right hand went right down the pipe and it landed clean. And obviously his opponent, Jamonte Clark, was able to stand, but then quickly polished off thereafter.
Slow pace continues here in round 2.
Gaucher getting the slight better of it. And also, I like what he's doing is he's landing a 1-2, a 1-2-3, and then framing off the lead hand to get away. It's both blinding to Lynch, and it creates distance. And a double leg attempt from Gaucher there, apparently.
Final 10 seconds of round 2 in this 10-round bout. Oof. They trade left hooks as Lynch comes out throwing in the final 10 seconds.
He wanted a little bit back there at the end of that round, but that's Gaucher's round if you ask me.
Just over an hour until the start of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing main card. That's 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, only on Showtime. And, of course, the featherweight interim title in the WBC at stake when Brandon the Heartbreaker Figueroa takes on Mark Magsayo, 2 former champions. We expect this one to be a fun one. We'll see how that plays out there inside the Toyota Arena.
Look at a jab, kind of splits the guard there a little bit, and a right hand follows at the end. Lily, it might have been a little bit low, but no big deal. Also,
easy for you to say, sir.
Yeah. Also, the referee is wearing gloves because he's a gentleman of just true distinguished background. So let's just be clear about that. If you don't wear gloves, the exit's that way.
The late Hall of Fame referee Steve Smoger, who just passed away a couple months back, famous for those dark purple vinyl or latex gloves there. The thing is, though, Double S, he'll let him fight, and that's why the fans loved him.
Fair enough.
Round 3, super welterweights. And Terrell Gaucher turned back this 1-year layoff after a very strong performance in a close decision defeat to Tim Tszyu, who was making his much-hyped U.S. debut. Tszyu, of course, will be back on Showtime next Saturday from Australia when he welcomes Tony Harrison.
That's going to be great.
A bout that should produce the next title challenger for Jermell Charlo's 4 154-pound world titles. We thought we were going to see Tszyu Charlo in January. An injury to Charlo set that back, but a lot of respect out to Tim Tszyu to stay busy and welcome the challenge of the former champion Harrison, who, Luke, you know, can box if you need it, has the power to get you out of there.
And I was just going to say, not to change the subject, but this is a better round for Lynch thus far. Now, Gaucher's having a good moment here. We'll see what happens. But for the first minute, good active jabbing from Lynch. But now you're starting to see Gaucher find a home for that right hand. Pay attention. The best punch so far, it's always been a good punch for Gaucher, to be quite clear. It's the one that sat down Clark. But the right hand is getting through now and again for Gaucher. And when it does, it's clearly having an impact.
Just a reminder that next week's Tszyu Tony Harrison bout, a 10:45 p.m. Eastern start. Just the main event, a special Showtime Boxing International telecast. Brian Custer, Abner Morris, Al Bernstein on the call alongside Jermell Charlo.
That's going to be fun in studio. And by the way, obviously Tszyu in front of the Aussies. That's going to be fantastic.
The word is that his father, the Hall of Famer, Kostya Tszyu, will be in attendance, which isn't always the case in his pro fights. 45 seconds to go in a slow-paced round 3 here as both fighters, Terrell Gaucher, black trunks, black gloves with the blue, opposite Brandon Lynch, looking to establish those jabs.
Nice hard jab from Gaucher. Excuse me, from Lynch.
Remember when Eddie Murphy had that record in the 80s? My Girl Likes to Party All the Time?
Yes.
My dad had that on cassette, you know.
You're definitely not making an old man reference here, are you?
We don't see enough boxers record music.
Deontay Wilder had a...
I think Close Your Shield's got a new single.
Yes. I cannot repeat the lyrics here. But it's on Instagram if
There
you're
it
curious.
is. Super welterweight action here between rounds. Terrell Gaucher coming back from that 1-year layoff, but can bad news Brandon Lynch score the biggest win of his young career? Here's some round 3 highlights, Luke.
That might have been Lynch's round. He did take a couple of hard right hands, but he was able to land much more effectively with the jab this round than Gaucher. Not much more. More effectively.
Not much to look at on those screens on
Right.
the left there, Luke Thomas. Country Time Lemonade would be the skin shade that I chose.
Could we look worse? We look like they're going to peel our skin off and use it to make hot dogs. We are just the ugliest people.
Apropos, if you watch our award-winning Morning Combat Sports Series every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, by the way.
If you're looking for more pink-skinned 40-year-old white guys, boy, we got you covered.
We'll have a recap of the action come Monday of tonight's Showtime Championship boxing card. Also, UFC action this weekend and the return of John Jones at heavyweight. But inside the ring here, round 4, 154 pounds. Terrell Gaucher commanding that center of the ring. 2012 Olympian, represented the U.S. in London.
Oh, good combination there. Some of it was blocked, but the left got through from Gaucher. He's able to split the guard of Lynch more easily than Lynch is able to either go around or split Gaucher's guard. Well, slight difference there.
It goes without saying here, if you follow the careers of both, that Gaucher's got an incredible experience advantage, technique advantage here. And he's being very deliberate in sort of playing the edges, getting closer, getting the timing down, and really limiting much coming back from Brandon Lynch, outside of some flurries in the final 10 seconds of each round. If you're going to play this pawing chess game with Terrell Gaucher and you don't have the power to make him pay for it, it can be a long night for you. I mentioned the Olympic pedigree of Terrell Gaucher. Lost in the second round in London to India's Vijender Singh by very controversial decision, which can often happen in the amateur ranks. But that same year, Luke, to get to London, Terrell Gaucher won the national championships with a victory over defending champion Caleb Plant in the finals. Where will you be, Luke Thomas, come March 25th, Showtime pay-per-view in Las Vegas? Hopefully inside the building with me, calling the preliminary action.
I would miss that for anything.
Caleb Plant, David Benavidez, two former super middleweight world champions.
Gaucher starting to break through here.
Gaucher getting more active. The more that jab splits the guard of Brandon Lynch, you can see that output of Gaucher picking up. He's a builder. That's fair to say.
Boy, look at how he just got Lynch to bite on that feint. And the feint drops the lead left of Lynch a lot, which is creating space for the right hand. Oof. And you see Lynch there trying to throw the left hook as a check to counter that right from Gaucher. This is better from him up against the ropes.
Closing in on 20 seconds to go in round 4. Brandon Lynch flipped the script of consistent jabs from Terrell Gaucher and well-timed right crosses over the top. Gaucher will give you the meat and potatoes, Luke, but it's effective. Nothing too flashy, but it's getting the job done through 4 rounds.
It's reasonably close. Gaucher has the edge. He does have the edge. We don't have the punch stats here in front of us to give you the numeric totals, but it does feel like the qualitative difference is noticeable in Gaucher's favor.
No question about it. And you have to wonder if he can get a victory here, if he can bounce back. He's got a name. We've seen him against so many of the big names in this division. He's yet to have been able to break through and get a world title onto his resume. But at 35, he still seems to be hungry and still seems to be in a position where he can be a tough out. This division's been fun in recent years, certainly super welterweight, but it's definitely going through a changing of the guard to a certain degree. The Jarrett Swift Herds, the Julian Williamses, Erislandy Laras have moved up in weight.
You can see there from the highlight how often that right hand is able to get through for Gaucher. He's able to get Lynch to move and then follow with the punches. And then then Lynch is off balance trying to throw that left hook. And Gaucher is just too far away or is actually inside the punching range with more linear punches. That's another difference too. Look at how linear in general, Gaucher's punches versus more how hooking they are for Lynch.
Gaucher showing some offensive intention here with combinations in the opening 30 seconds, right in the center of the ring. He's been able to keep his back off the ropes and really frustrating Brandon Lynch up to this point.
I want you to pay attention to something. I want you to watch how Lynch lightly lowers his lead left. There's a lot of L's on that, but he does it as he moves, as he turns, as he pivots sometimes, and Gaucher is timing it. You'll see he goes from a high guard and then he drops, and then you can just see when the punch is going to be coming in general. That's good body work there from Gaucher. Just pointing out, pay attention to the lead left hand of Lynch. You're going to watch it move in ways where you can just detect when the opening is going to be there. Right there. You see he just sort of comes when the elbow is then parallel to the ground and he moves around with it. Gaucher, whether Lynch is moving straight or at angles, Gaucher just waits for that. You can see.
Well, I like that hard counter right hand from Gaucher. His back touched the ropes. Gaucher did for the first time in a long time through 5 rounds here. But boy, did he make Lynch pay instantly for closing that distance.
Yeah, Gaucher a little bit more active this round. And there he's finding the right hand. Pay attention to the lead left hand. He has to change his guard. He has to change his stance almost, Lynch does, to begin to throw it or meaningfully use it. And every time he does, well, not every time, many times, Gaucher is able to find a home for that right hand as a consequence.
Remember, Terrell Gaucher dropped Tim Zhu in round 1 of their bout last March 26th. It was in Minneapolis at the Armory. The best arenas.
Good job turning Lynch there. Well done by Gaucher. You see, I get, as they say in Washington D.C. in the DMV area, I get sized for good footwork.
Yeah, they don't speak like that in Connecticut, I'll tell you. Right hand to the body from Terrell Gaucher. Would you like to see more output out of him for as well as he's controlling the terms of this fight?
Thing is, Lynch is dangerous. He's far from out of it.
He knows where the weight room is, Brandon Lynch. I'll
Well,
tell
he
you that
does,
much.
huh?
Left hook to the body
Splitting his timing.
from Terrell Gaucher.
10 seconds. Stop at the bell.
Now Gaucher has lowered his own left, kind of bringing the jab from the hip to change the angle of it. So Lynch lowers his level, and the round closes.
I'd like to see you, speaking of Eddie Murphy, Brandon Lynch, the nephew of the famous comedian, actor, I'd like to see you in that red leather jumpsuit he wore on the Raw special, you know?
No, there's no demand for that.
You a big Eddie Murphy delirious guy as well in the mid-'80s?
If you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, Eddie Murphy was God. Let's take a look at the quick highlights here. Gaucher covering up, turning, and then popping with a right hook as he was able to get the pivot and angled. Just amazing work.
Terrell Gaucher has worked a steady jab, good clean counter shots. And at times he's looked a little bit too patient, but he stepped on the gas in key moments to get off combinations and he's really using it, as we say, to discipline his opponent, to let him know, you try to step on that gas pedal, you'll pay for it.
Right. And again, we don't have the punch stats, but that just seemed like Gaucher was more active that round as well.
10-round super welterweight feature bout here. The final of our 3 preliminary fights on the Showtime Boxing Countdown show. Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, taking you on the journey. 10 fight cards in 9 weeks for Showtime. From championship boxing to Showbox, the new generation, all the way to Showtime pay-per-view. But look at the action early here from Brandon Lynch. Backing Gaucher up to the ropes, and
He has to be careful. He's getting square when he follows up with the right.
wondered at some point something would have to give here. Gaucher controlling the action. Will Brandon Lynch take some more chances as we start the second half of this 10-round fight?
Don't wait on it, son. Don't wait on it. Do it again.
31 years old, Brandon Lynch. Fighting out of Los Angeles.
Break on your own. Break on your own. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Throw it in the body.
His only career defeat came in his 3rd pro fight. Oof. It's a fighter with a 1-5 record. He was stopped in the 2nd round by Taif Harris. He's been unbeaten since then. We mentioned the draw with Marcos Hernandez. He avenged that. Won a decision after getting up off the canvas and taking charge this round.
Yeah, changing his timing up a little bit too, and moving a little bit better.
Gaucher keeps a very tight guard. Doesn't give you much of a strike zone to deal with. I'd like to see Lynch go to the body more.
Oh, hard right hand from Gaucher, timed off a double jab and then a cross. Best punch of either guy in the fight, certainly for Gaucher.
The fact that Gaucher can time those explosive shots, often when there's not much action going on, catching his opponents off guard. But he does have some pop. Seen that in that 2nd round destruction of Jamonte Clark. Under a minute to go in round 6, and this is Gaucher feeling the early surge from Brandon Lynch this round. Meeting him in the center of the ring with big punching. The right cross off the jab.
That right hand counter from Gaucher is just giving Lynch fits.
Top of the hour, 9 p.m. Eastern will be the start of the Showtime Championship Boxing tripleheader. A right hand from Gaucher again, countered by...
You're seeing these bursts at the beginning and ends of rounds from Lynch. I don't think they're going to win him much, but he's spirited.
Brandon Lynch needed something to break up the consistency of the action dictated by Terrell Gaucher up to this point. He got Gaucher's attention. He also ate a very big right hand midway through that round.
Hoping we can see that replay.
You see him take the advice from his corner here. This is early on when he pinned Gaucher against the ropes.
Good, hard, stiff jab there from Lynch. And then to the body.
But as the round progressed, Terrell Gaucher timed him, and that counter right hand became a thing of beauty. So we get closer to the start of round 7, 10 rounds in the 154-pound division. Can Terrell Gaucher bounce back from defeat, a one-year layoff, and at age 35 return as a consistent, almost a perennial title threat here in the division? At times, he's been a name you have to beat to get to the top. At times, he's gotten right there himself. Does he have another run in him? Jermell Charlo, your undisputed champion, idle recovering from an injury. We expect him back this summer.
So sometimes Lynch is leaning back for jab defense, and when he does, he's dropping his left, and that's when some of the right hands from Gaucher are finding the mark.
By far the biggest step up in the career of Brandon Lynch at age 31, and Gaucher making him pay each time he crosses that line.
By the way, another, here comes Lynch with a strong start to the beginning of the round. Let's see if he can maintain it, though, in the middle portion of the round.
Combination punching by Lynch against the ropes. Gaucher largely covering up, but that's the action, the intention that we're looking for out of Brandon Lynch.
Right on cue, the first minute passes, and here comes Gaucher firing the rib roasters, though.
You know what I think would spice up our weekly picks competition we do every Friday in Morning Combat called OK Bet?
You being fired?
Where we each make 5 predictions from the MMA and boxing calendar over the weekend. How about each one we get wrong? We take a roaster from Terrell Gaucher, a rib roaster inside the studio.
Or you could just try to pronounce more names from Latin America, that too.
Amilcar Vidal Jr., thank you very much.
That's better. Oof. Good combinations there.
Gaucher very hungry to get off that right hand, working off the jab.
This is what I mean, right? Lynch wins the first minute or so. Gaucher tends to take over in the middle portion of the round. And then kind of, there's a bit of a blitz at the very end again from Lynch. Let's see if that happens here.
Well, Gaucher has been very deft at mixing in those left hooks to the body just as Lynch starts to get a little bit of confidence. Those will slow you down.
A little bit of stance switching, but he needs to be careful with that from Lynch.
Squares up a little bit too much for my liking.
This is a better round from Lynch overall, certainly with effort. He's listening to his corner about putting Gaucher on his heels, and to some extent, he's had success with that.
Gaucher has been doing a very good job, though, punching off the ropes the rare times that he's been cornered.
His ring craft and ring generalship is pretty clear.
IQ.
Yeah.
A stud amateur out of Cleveland in his days, like we said, 2012 U.S. Olympian. 7 rounds complete here in this 10-round super welterweight feature. Good action the last 2 rounds from Brandon Lynch. Probably not enough to get the edge on the scorecards.
Here's the replay. He gets a right through here. Against the ropes, when he can flurry, the left hook by Gaucher was a nice response. But I would say, in general, Lynch does some of his better work there. We talk about it all the time, BC, but it really is true. There are going to be just so many situations in combat sports where, to the extent you have a experienced, talented fighter who knows good footwork, knows good ring generalship or ring craft, if you give them space to move, the fight becomes vastly more difficult. Conversely, if you can constrain it, and again, always easier said than done, they just become different fighters. They become different fighters when they're up against the ropes. They become different fighters when they have to constantly pedal on the back foot. And again, Gaucher not so much because his quality is showing through, but it is an often found scenario in combat sports.
Round 8 of a scheduled 10. Once again, Brandon Lynch, the 31-year-old, getting off busy to start the round, flurrying to the body. Can he make Terrell Gaucher fight a little bit at the terms he's not looking to do? Some nice counter shots here from Gaucher.
Fight is definitely a little bit more open now. Actually, I don't mind the clinching there from Lynch so much, considering he got left hook countered last time. This time, he landed a couple of nice shots, a good combo, and then clinched. A little bit better. Good left hook there from Gaucher.
Both fighters 5'10" tall. Gaucher with an 1.5 inch reach advantage. Good infighting there as Gaucher lands a counter right uppercut on the chin. Not much leverage on it, but sometimes you got to just touch them. Let them know you're there. Throw a few off-speed punches.
Oh, hard right hand from Gaucher. Again, he is just able to find the pockets and the openings. Also, sometimes the positioning just outside for that right hand to come right over the top. There's a nice jab that splits his timing. That has been the main weakness for Lynch in this contest, is unable to defend the right straight from Gaucher. Actually, I suppose the jab would be a better argument, but in terms of more powerful weapons.
Luke, do you have any message for Brandon Lynch's uncle Eddie Murphy, who may be watching right now?
I think Trading Places is your best movie, Eddie. I love that movie. When the two cops pick him up and he discovers he has legs again, I mean, who doesn't?
I mean, who doesn't love Dan Aykroyd?
Come on.
Lynch showing some real intention here. Big hooks to the body. Terrell Gaucher countering. There's a right hand that may have moved Gaucher for the first time, just a bit. Lynch finding the mark.
Lynch kind of accepting, I'm just going to take more punishment, but I'm going to be a busier and a little bit more in Gaucher's face. I think he's getting a little bit better success that way. A more open-spirited contest rather than kind of, archery from afar is a better fight for him.
Final seconds. Round 7. Excuse me. I believe that was round 9 in this 10-round fight.
Oh, that was round 8.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Here's a look back at the action last round.
Gaucher having to turn and run. He did land a short right hand in there, but oof. Yeah.
Correction, yes. Round 8 complete. 2 rounds to go in this 154-pound featured attraction. Luke, how could we miss Beverly Hills Cop when talking about the great filmography of one?
I didn't miss it. It is a tremendous film. But
Uncle Eddie Murphy,
I don't think it's on par.
I mean, you're just not going to mention Coming to America? Is it just not in you?
That would be honorable mention.
Okay. All right. I know you're a big Boomerang guy.
I mean, none of these are like anything but great movies. I'm just pointing that out.
2 rounds to go. Terrell Gaucher and a much more aggressive Brandon Lynch over the last 2 rounds. It may not have been enough to make a dent on the scorecards, and down goes Brendan Lynch on a right hand from Gaucher.
What did we say? He came in with the double jab. When the hand changes off of the guard, the more upright guard, Gaucher just timed it.
See if the referee will give him a go.
Ooh.
Big right hands from Gaucher.
Oh, I'm surprised the referee let that one go.
Second knockdown of the round for Gaucher. Will Brandon Lynch beat the count one more time?
He will.
Can Gaucher finish off the comeback fight 1 year off?
Yeah, this is over.
Terrell Gaucher with the statement, 9th round TKO. He pushed unbeaten Tim Tszyu 1 year ago, dropping him in the first round. But he bounces back with a big bang here against a hungry Brandon Lynch.
BC, I'm not sure that's all that different from the punch that sat down Clayton.
Clark.
Excuse me, what am I saying? Clark.
2 fights ago, the second round finish over Jamonte Clark for Terrell Gaucher. Luke, he took his time building behind the jab, but here in round 9, as we look back, the first of 2 knockdowns was that counter right
triple jab.
hand.
He triples his jab and he got his timing split. He came in, it wasn't aggressive enough. It didn't either force him to be blinded. He could just watch it happen in front of him. It was just a touch jab. He didn't put anything else behind it, so he got countered.
I'm not sure Lynch was fully there after that first knockdown.
Yeah, they could have stopped it here.
Look at Gaucher on the headhunting mission. You could have stopped it after the second knockdown, too. But Lynch, given every chance possible to recover, he was certainly game to get back up a second time.
Just excellent timing from Terrell Gaucher.
You can see what I mentioned earlier. The power punching's there, the technique's there. He just takes his time to create those openings and find a comfortable moment to deliver. We waited till round 9. He delivered in a big way. 3 knockdowns and a TKO win.
And I'll say this, too. Sometimes we get these guys who have been in big main events or big main card fights, and then we get them on the prelims, and you don't know exactly what state they're going to be in. They've been off for a while or whatever the case may be. I thought Gaucher looked pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty
Two
good.
Fighters, hugging in the center of the cage. Good sportsmanship there from the 35-year-old Gaucher. A comeback win 12 months removed from his last fight. See what type of big opportunity he can spin forward right now in this fun division. As always, Jermell Charlo, your undisputed champion at 154 pounds, but we will see 1 week from tonight, Showtime Boxing International Special Edition, when Tim Tszyu welcomes Tony Harrison. Could the winner be facing Jermell Charlo this summer for all 4 world titles? Just another fun fight in this division. I think we have Brian Castano moving up to middleweight. Fought Jermell Charlo twice, a tough draw in the first one, and of course knocked out in their rematch. The time of the stoppage in round 9 was 50 seconds as Terrell Gaucher scored the final of 3 knockdowns. And Luke, to put a bow on this for Terrell Gaucher, a hungry opponent in Brandon Lynch, but the skill difference, the technique difference was certainly wide. But he didn't mess around. He didn't take too many chances. He built over time safely. And once he got closer and was able to deliver the clean power punches, that counter right hand was beauty.
It was tremendous. The timing on it was beautiful. We've been talking about it the entire fight. You can see you had Lynch up here, and he would just go to this level to do something new. In this particular case, he didn't move his guard just with that. It was off of the triple jab on the way in. But the jab has to do something as it makes its way into. It has to either get them to shell up and not know what's coming. There has to be mixing it with feints, for example, is often a better choice. But if you just come in like that way and there's steady rhythm on it, you're going to find someone who's got great timing like Gaucher who can split the timing and break the rhythm, and that's exactly what you saw there. The accuracy, I'll also point out for Terrell Gaucher, very good, and we saw it, as I mentioned before, in his last fight. Excuse me, not the Tim Tszyu fight, the Jamonte Clark fight. In that fight as well, hard, powerful right hand. Now, I want to point out, though, both times in that fight and in this one, the opponent trying to corner him and him waiting on that and then using that extra power that comes from 2 things meeting in the middle. Just good work from a solid, talented veteran in Terrell Gaucher.
And the nephew of Eddie Murphy, Brandon Lynch, falls to defeat for just the second time. And hey, 2003's Daddy Daycare on the Eddie Murphy filmography. Kind of an underrated, comeback moment.
Oh, I don't think that's top 10. Right?
My kids like it, so I was just shouting that.
Well, that says a lot.
Yeah, but you know what might not be for my kids, Luke? Big-time boxing action. That's going to be going on tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, Showtime Championship Boxing. Just about 35 minutes out from this top of the hour, 6 p.m. in the East on Showtime. And Brandon Figueroa and Mark Magsayo. Let's set the table for this one. The interim WBC featherweight title at stake. Why? Well, Luke, we saw Mark Magsayo have a big 2022. Upsets an injured Gary Russell Jr. to win the world title in a close fight. Takes on unbeaten Ray Vargas in his first title defense. And that's another one that in some ways could have gone either way. A split decision loss. Ray Vargas gets the win. He moved up a couple months back to 130 pounds, was unsuccessful fighting Oshaki Foster for the vacant title, but that created the opening here for an interim title opportunity between these two former world champions. There's some highlights you can see there, the still pictures from that close split decision loss to close 2022 for Mark Magsayo there on the left against Ray Vargas. So he's looking to bounce back from this loss. But so it's to some degree is Brandon Figueroa, the heartbreaker. And Luke, even though he knocked out Carlos Castro in his official featherweight debut last year, we got to go back to that Stephen Fulton Jr. fight. Probably the fight of the year in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Two unbeaten champions, a unification bout at 122 pounds. And as Barry Tompkins, you know, the great voice of boxing, he does great work with me on Showbox The New Generation. Remember his famous call, Luke, at the end of Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler in 1987, a split decision, one of the most disputed decisions in boxing history. He said,
Hagler won, or should have won.
I'm fine with Ray Leonard winning that. He said, "How do you like it? How do you like it?" And Luke, you know, that was the big question after Fulton Figueroa. How did you like it that night?
I love that fight. I always thought it'd be a tough fight for Fulton, not because he's not extremely skilled. We know that he is. But I thought that's a lot of volume to deal with for 12 rounds. We haven't talked about it yet. Figueroa, dude, his chin is legit. His ability to absorb damage is absurd.
He's never been down. He's got one of the best beards in the game today.
It's absurd. It's absurd how much damage he can take. It's a big part of why, like, for example, speaking of the Castro fight, if you watch a few of those rounds, Castro is landing cleanly on him in ways where you're like, I don't know who's having the greater impact pure for power, but Castro is very much in certain parts of that fight his equal. But the problem is Figueroa can just tolerate the damage in ways that other people cannot. And so I thought he's going to be all over Fulton. But Fulton Jr., boy, they call him Cool Boy Steph for a reason. His slickness, his timing, his defensive skills. He was able to, at times, slow down Figueroa. He was, at times, able to neutralize, I think is a better way to put it, neutralizing Figueroa through long stretches of that fight, then just doing, in the end, the better work. But the thing is, BC, we talked about it, for example, when Charlo beat Castaño finally in their epic rematch, and in this case, this first fight between Fulton Jr. and Figueroa. What I mean to say is, it's one thing to beat a guy with your game. It's another way to accept the terms of the other guy's fight and still beat him. And I think Fulton was able to do that. Fulton Jr. was able to do that to Figueroa. Now, Figueroa, to this day, still disputes that he lost. He didn't agree with it in the aftermath.
He called it a robbery.
He called it a robbery.
He's much more calm about it now. In the immediate aftermath, he was calling that. But look,
it's a close fight. It's definitely not a robbery. I do think Fulton's the rightful winner, but I just want to point out, Figueroa is one of these guys who he will pull you into his fight. And yes, Fulton Jr. was able to get away with it. We're going to see if Magsayo is that guy.
Well, I mentioned the line from Barry Tompkins, the famous one, "How do you like it?" It's a question you got to ask yourself after that fight, that Fulton-Figueroa first fight. It took place in November of 2021. It goes down as a majority decision for Fulton. Could have gone either way. I don't remember a fight at the highest level where each round, both guys essentially successfully employed their game plan and just kind of took turns. I'll go for 90 seconds and get the best of you. You come back for 90 seconds. And it was, you know, the pinpoint power punching of Fulton in the first half with the pressure and the body attack from Figueroa. For Brandon Figueroa, the younger brother of Omar Figueroa Jr., he thought this time was going to be a rematch, one division above at 126 against Fulton. There was some early talk. Fulton looks like going in the direction of pound-for-pound king Naiwa Inoue later this spring. So that opened up the opportunity here at featherweight for Figueroa to fight for an interim world title, fresh off that stoppage of Carlos Castro, and continue the momentum he seems to build in this new weight class. Now, look, it's a 4-pound jump from 122 to 126, but the way Brandon Figueroa describes that is he feels like a finisher. He feels like a puncher. If he can use that explosiveness now without draining himself so much, but like we talked about earlier on tonight's telecast, mix in a little bit more use of that jab and work from distance a little bit more. When you talk about his chin, you talk about his ability to throw punches and bunches. Now you talk about the ability to throw a little bit of off-speed pitching at you and try to jab, try to box a little bit more. Well, I mean, how young is he right here? We're talking about a 26-year-old fighter.
Yep.
Who grew up in a boxing family, right? 7 years younger than his older brother, Omar, former world champion, who just recently retired following his comeback loss in 2022. His father, as you see, is the trainer. This is a young kid who's really right now just kind of figuring out how good he might be. He's got stoppage wins in his last 10 fights. That one against Luis Neri to the body was one of the biggest ones we've seen. But he looks and feels more like a puncher now, even with those stoppage wins, where maybe the stoppages in the past came on accumulation. Now he feels like he can stand in there and trade or box you if he needs to. But for as versatile as he has the potential to be, I feel like he knows what's coming on the other side in Mark Magsayo. Promoted by Manny Pacquiao from the Philippines, watched Pacquiao defeat Marco Antonio Barrera in their first meeting and said, that's what I want to do. And now he's training out of that same wild card gym that Manny did in Los Angeles, formerly trained, of course, by Freddie Roach. Tonight will be the first fight of Freddie's longtime assistant, Marvin Somodio, taking over the reins of him. But for Mark Magsayo, man, he came so close in losing the belt to Ray Vargas, came so close in winning it early last year against Gary Russell Jr., He's explosive. He's athletic. He's relentless. But does he have the craft necessary if Figueroa chooses to box to play chess with him, to dance with him a little bit on the outside?
He hasn't really been forced to so much by other opponents. So at this stage in his career, I see that main event a little bit differently. I see the main event as going, I should say, starting a little bit like the Castro fight for Figueroa, where it will be a little bit on the edge and, mid-range, right, is where it's largely going to take place. I think both of these guys are going to revert to who they just naturally are. They're come-forward fighters, different, obviously, but I would say of the two, Magsayo's definitely the bigger puncher. I think the evidence kind of speaks to that. On the other hand, granted it was a different weight class, but for Figueroa to stop Neri essentially with body shots, I think says that he's not out of the running, as we mentioned.
For sure.
He may have been cutting a little bit extra weight to get down to 122, 126. He's going to look a little bit better. But I just feel like in the end, they're going to try and meet directly in the middle. It's going to be a game of pressure and pushing the other guy backwards. Who will win in the end? We'll find out tonight on Showtime, starting the broadcast at 9 p.m. in the East. But Figueroa certainly, I think, will be the busier of the two. Magsayo, the heavier puncher of the two. That's the central tension for me.
Sometimes it can be frustrating watching Magsayo at the elite level because the power, the athleticism is there, but sometimes you want a little bit more patience or craft. But so was young Manny Pacquiao. Not to fully compare, they're not comparable in a lot of ways in accomplishments and styles, but aggression certainly for Mark Magsayo. Pacquiao was kind of that way early on, was all left hand, all thunder coming at you, and was able to add craft over time. I'm looking to see tonight in this big comeback from Magsayo, can he work in that jab more? Can he control a little bit with distance? And one thing to note, Luke, even though Brandon Figueroa is an orthodox fighter, he switches to southpaw a lot. And it was tracked that 85% of the Stephen Fulton fight 2 fights ago, he did it from the southpaw stance. Now, you asked, does Mark Magsayo have experience against southpaws? 2 of them in his last 5 fights, both wins. One, the upset over Gary Russell Jr. for the title. The other against Rigoberto Hermosillo. So it's not something that's going to throw him off guard. Do you like it, though, when young fighters, nobody does it better than Jaron Boots at switching stances? Terrence Bud Crawford, the master of it in the game today. Is Figueroa more effective on either side to you, or does it not matter because when he provides the flurry of activity, he's almost squaring up and going to the body?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he spends a lot of time square, candidly, just on tape study, if you look at him. Also, I think a lot of times when he's in close, he does stand right foot forward. So to your point about the standing southpaw, I think in general, more recently, he's been standing that way. But again, he flows a little bit in that state. I'm of the belief that you should switch stance if you can do it in a way where it meaningfully enhances your game. Doing it just to do it, or doing it and obviously you're getting caught in the actual stance itself, or you're getting caught in a position where one stance is not as strong as the other, that's not great. Because BC Figueroa is so close all the time, he's not really made to pay for those switches. He does a lot of switches on the outside very visibly, like this, and then he'll switch to this way. And you talk to a few guys who are really good in the game, and they'll tell you they like it when fighters do that because they can time them. But he often does it when guys are already moving backwards, so it's not as much of a threat. The point I'm trying to make here is switching stances such a key part of Figueroa's offense that he couldn't win without it? I don't think so. I think it makes him comfortable, which is important. There are times he can be uncertain with it. It's just not a dynamic force in his offense. Relative to, let's say, how would stance switching compare with the overall volume that he throws, or the pace he can keep, or the distance he likes to fight from, and how he's able to sort of find his way into range. It helps that with the range finding a little bit. He does switch stance sometimes through combination, but it's not like Ennis, who is, well, at least it appears to us, can do everything from southpaw that he can from orthodox at a wide variety of ranges. For a guy like Figueroa, it's a little bit more about camouflage. It's a little bit more about misdirection. It's helpful, but not crazy important to his game from what we can tell.
Magsayo stepping in 8-month layoff tonight. And just a key note, all 3 of his last 3 fights were split or majority decisions, some that have gone his way, that some hasn't. So Magsayo, look, he's never out of a fight. He never stops trying, never stops putting on the pressure. He makes very close fights. His quote ahead of this is Mark Magsayo talking, "This is different than my last fight. Ray Vargas likes to run, but Figueroa comes to fight. It's a big difference, and it's going to be a much more exciting fight tonight." So, look, Magsayo, if there's a reason he lost that split decision, he did have trouble with Vargas's movement, Vargas's boxing. Again, something I really want to see is how much will Figueroa look to try to establish that distance, look to try to box at times to throw off Magsayo's preparations, to maybe bank some rounds by working from distance, or will this be in the trenches like Brandon Figueroa likes to do? Look, when you've got a history of making very fun fights on the inside, your family's got a history of it, it's hard always to change that. But if Brandon Figueroa wants to continue to climb, and, he's not that far from being considered in the, the periphery of the pound for pound, in this sport, 26 years old, really coming together in this new weight class, I'd like to see some dual threat action out of him tonight. But it's going to be a good one. Top of the hour at 9 p.m. Eastern, that interim WBC featherweight title at stake. And, Brandon Figueroa, they call him the heartbreaker, Luke. If I was that good looking, I don't think I'd need to be in boxing. But, he's got that heart of a champion.
It's funny. He actually talks about it. They're like, people are like, you should model. He's like, I like face punching better.
Yeah.
So
don't mess with what works. You know what you like a lot, Luke, is tattoos.
I do like tattoos. Yes,
you're well spoken on the design. Mark Magsayo's got some tattoos there. His wife Frances is a tattoo artist.
I have read the same stat sheet. Yes.
All right. Would you consider going under the knife or the needle?
The needle? Only if my wife was good at it.
All right. This body untouched by your ink.
Yes, but heavily touched with ugliness. There is that.
All right, triple header tonight. But Luke, tonight is just one item on the menu for the spring and early summer Showtime sports calendar across boxing and mixed martial arts with Bellator MMA. A week from tonight, of course, a Showtime Boxing International special from Australia when Tim Tszyu takes on Tony Harrison. And look ahead to some of the calendar here. March 25th, a Showtime pay-per-view from Las Vegas.
I cannot wait.
Former super middleweight world champions David Benavidez, Caleb Plant. No titles at stake, but really no titles needed here.
Who cares?
This fight is important in terms of future title positioning, but it's also, Luke, bad blood central, and I like to live
I know, and I'm not one of these guys. BC and I are the same way in this. Like, don't get me wrong, we love a good grudge match, but a lot of times the whole promotion of a fight, it overemphasizes it and makes it out to be more than it is.